Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast Offseason Preview Series, where Bryce Simon and I dive in and talk about all 30 NBA teams and the offseason that they have ahead and the decisions they have to make. Before we get into it, we're going to talk about the Detroit Pistons today. We just got to tell you, go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Over 35,000 of you have done that already. We are immensely appreciative of everything that you guys do in order to support the show. Leave a like, go hit the subscribe on the Spotify feed, on the Apple Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. Please, it helps the show grow so much. Today, though, we are focusing on Bryce Simon's Detroit Pistons. And Bryce, I feel like I'm just going to kind of let you lead the show today because you have your own cap sheet for the Pistons. You know what's going on with this situation so much better than I do, in all honesty.
No, so honestly, I'm excited to talk to you about this because it's always fun to get outsiders' perspective, especially on topic number one, which I think is the most important topic for the Pistons this offseason, which for the non-YouTube listeners is the extensions for Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. It's crazy that we're already there for those guys, but their rookie extensions are available this offseason. And I think both of them are very interesting conversations around those. So it's do you run it back or do you try to make a little bit more of a move? I think those are the two real big things here. And it's all right there on the outline in terms of the questions you have for the Pistons this offseason.
So before we get into the exact fit of like question number one here, which is the extension decisions for Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, I almost want to go to question 3 to start.
Okay.
And this is something you and I have talked about for 2 years now. And we have more information now. We know what this team looks like now after a playoff run. They gave the Knicks an absolute hell of a playoff series in the first round. Does this young core for you, with Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren, I would throw Isaiah Stewart into that mix. I would certainly throw Ron Holland into that mix. Do all of these players and pieces fit together for you in a way that you are willing now, because ultimately this is the summer where it comes to a head, where you have to make your decisions financially. Do you think that this group of players fits well enough together to where you are willing to actually commit real dollars to them financially?
At this point, I cannot say that I feel confident in that they all do. There's too much listen, how many players? You just named 6 players.
Correct.
4 of those are non-shooters. Not like are bad shooters, non-shoot. Like Isaiah Stewart Isaiah Stewart has the best career 3-point percentage of the 4 players I'm talking about, and he regressed in terms of volume of 3-point attempts. The Asar Thompson shooting situation has been highlighted going back to pre-draft. Ron Holland didn't shoot it a whole lot better, even though I do think Ron Holland has the best chance of shooting from the 3-point line. And Jalen Duren, like, it's just not really in his projection at all and never has been. Yeah. Cade struggled from 3 in the playoffs. It was better in the regular season. J.I. is actually the one, again, I think people would be shocked if they went and looked at his 3-point percentage this year. J.I. finished at 40%. Now 30 games before the broken leg. But we talked all the time as well. Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, what do they do offensively? A lot. Occupy the same space. And right now, Ron Holland is a slasher and a cutter more than anything. And so I just, right now, the answer is no, because there's too many non-floor spacers. And this is why it plays into this question, especially with Jalen Duren, in my opinion, in terms of what are you willing to give that guy if you don't think he can play with Asar Thompson, because I don't think you're moving off Asar Thompson. And I mean, everybody's tradable. I'm not saying he's untouchable, but in general, Asar Thompson should be very strongly in your future plans. And if he doesn't fit with Jalen Duren, then what do you feel comfortable giving Jalen Duren in terms of a contract wise?
So it's funny you bring up the Jaden Ivey thing, and you brought up Isaiah Stewart as a shooter. Between Isaiah Stewart and Jaden Ivey, who do you think has the best career 3-point percentage?
Probably Is it Stu? Surely it's not.
It's
okay.
It's within 1% though.
I was going to say it. Yeah.
34.5 for Isaiah Stewart versus 35.2 for Ivy. The thing for Ivy though is I do think Ivy took a big leap as a shooter this year. 45.2% off the catch from three this year. Actually was at 35.9% off the dribble as well from three. Even last year, like I thought that like there were strides as a shooter. Even he hit 35% of his catch and shoot opportunities last season as well. I feel really good about Jaden Ivey playing off of Cade. I still do. I feel that way. The key is going to be defensively. Can you get enough bodies on the court that like really are capable of making up for some of their limitations? Although I thought Cade did a pretty good job defensively in the playoffs, to be honest with you. So I think that there are moments where you look at the three core players that we have at the top of our roster under contract sheet: Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Ausar Thompson. I think that you can make that core trio work. If you're going to have Ausar on the court, though, in a playoff game, it has to be with a spacing big, I think is where I'm at. It just has to be. And at that point now, you're picking between Ausar and Jalen Duren, because both of those guys are going to make significant dollars. And you have to make a decision on Jalen Duren making significant dollars now. I think if you are committed to Ausar, and you should be committed to Ausar, I would not pay Jalen Duren, is where I'm at.
That's where I've landed as well. It's not as much of an indictment of who Jalen Duren is or how much he has grown and improved in his young career, because I do think he made strides this year. I reference this all the time over on the Pistons Pulse and other podcasts. I say, Sam hasn't always been the biggest Jalen Duren supporter or, like the biggest fan defensively. And I said, but the biggest compliment Sam Vecenie can give Jalen Duren is that his two most impressive games were in Game 5 and Game 6 of the New York playoff series. And that's a huge compliment, and rightfully so, much earned and deserved from Jalen Duren, which is why I hate that we're getting to this. 12 months ago, I was like, I don't even know. Sam, 25 games into this season, I was saying Jalen Duren should get put on the bench and told to watch how hard Isaiah Stewart and Paul Reed play and learn from it. Trajan Langdon said in his exit interviews that he specifically said Jalen really improved after the first 25 games of the season. So everybody knows that it wasn't good to start the year, and then it grew throughout the season. So that's why I hate this, because I do think he showed maturity and growth and improvement. But it's a roster construction thing at a certain point, and now it's starting to affect what are our cap decisions, and it's happening now.
Okay, so here's the other side of that, right?
Sure.
You've kind of brought up the idea of, is there a big move out there? Like, is there something that they could do to like really jumpstart this thing?
Sure.
Do you maybe keep Jalen Duren and look to move Ausar, if that's the case? Thinking that you could move Ausar for something even greater than what you could move Jalen Duren for. Like if Ausar Thompson is like a centerpiece of a deal, is there like a real dude out there that you could go get?
That's interesting, because in that scenario, in a world where Ausar isn't on the roster, Jalen Duren, it doesn't seem like as bad a fit, right? Like depending on who this star would be, assuming if he's a star, he probably can shoot it. So if it's Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, star that doesn't have floor spacing issues, Tobias Harris, Jalen Duren, like you're not worried about the overlap in terms of how those two tend to gravitate to the same areas of the floor. My pushback is, I have said multiple times now, I would not make that move this offseason. I am not necessarily interested in doing that right now, because I want to see what this team looks like next year. I know what Cade is. What if you don't have to make a move for a star? What if Jaden Ivey takes another jump, right? I think he was like at 17 points per game on 40% from three. What if he can get to 22 points per game, Sam? What if that is a real backcourt there? Asar takes a little bit of a jump with his ball handling and his finishing. Ron Holland becomes a two-way rotation wing. You know, like I'm not even saying like the ceiling of Ron Holland. It's just what if there are guys on this roster that you can still get data on and figure out and have room for growth. And I'm not willing to undercut that just because, quite honestly, they just overachieve. Whatever they did this year was impressive, but I'm not ready to jumpstart it in that way yet.
I don't think there's actually a player out there that like really tracks for this, to be honest with you. Like, I don't think that there's a dude out there where I'm like, I have to go get this guy, right? Like maybe if the Pelicans were willing to move Zion, that is where like it gets interesting to me. But even then, Zion and Jalen Duren don't work together. So I think that there's just not a player out there probably that I would move Asar for, which means at the end of the day, my decision on Jalen Duren is I'm probably just playing out this string for another year and seeing if the defense is consistent for a full season, as opposed to what I would argue was like the 25 games at the end of the year going into the 6 games that they played in the playoffs.
Yeah.
If he's that guy, I'm for it. Like this sounds great. Like I really liked what I saw from Jalen Duren at the end of that Knicks series after he kind of figured some things out in terms of what the Knicks were doing. I thought he struggled early on, but then he like actually there was problem solving there in a real way. The Ivy one is like almost more difficult to me. The Jalen Duren one is just like, look, if Duren's willing to agree to a contract that's like 20 million or less,
so
like
that's
where it's like a huge bargain, I'm for it. Like I would just do that immediately. Is there a number where you're like, I would just do Jalen Duren as an extension like right now?
Yeah, like that's the number. I've said my thing like with Jalen Duren,
23.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. My thing with Jalen Duren's extension offer is I think what I'm willing to offer him, he's probably not willing to take in terms of his representation. And it's because the center market is a disaster, because if I'm Jalen Duren, I'm saying, give me Nick Claxton money. And if I'm the Pistons, I'm saying, well, Nick Claxton money is $5 million more per year than Ivica Zubac's money, and you're not better than Ivica. And so it's just the market is all over the place for it. I think where I wouldn't want to give him the Claxton deal because the Claxton deal hasn't aged great, but I understand salary cap is going up. Anything above that, I'm starting to get really nervous. I would definitely sign up for 4 for 20, 4 for 22. Maybe you could talk me into the 4 for 25 and just, per year average annual value here. So 4 for 100. That's my max right now, I think, for Jalen Duren. I don't think I would go over the Claxton deal, Sam.
And if I'm him, honestly, I'm probably taking that into next summer at that point. Is the reality. Yeah. Like I would like to see if I can get a bigger deal next summer than that. So, or maybe look, restricted free agency is hard. We talked about that in a couple of these other videos previously. People don't love going to restricted free agency, but also like Josh Giddey is probably going to get paid this summer in restricted free agency by the Bulls. So there are real avenues to where guys sometimes just take deals because they want to lock in. It's hard to turn down $90 million, guys. Yes. Like if I told you are guaranteed to make $90 million over the next 4 years because that is the deal that is being offered and that is what's on the table, that shit is hard to turn down. Yes. Like that is, you're just like looking at this and just being like, man, I've already made 20. I can lock in $100 million over the first 8 years of my career. Are you kidding me? And Jalen Duren, by the way, will be what? By the end of that second deal, he'll still only be like 26, 27. He's younger than big contract.
He's younger than Asar.
That's it. So like, I don't know. If I'm the Pistons, that's what I'm offering. I'm offering like in the low 20s and seeing if he takes it. If he doesn't, I completely understand it and I'm totally fine with it. But there is a number that I would agree to. I think it's lower than what Jalen Duren probably wants, is the fairest way to put this right now.
That is exactly what I've been saying for a few months now with Jalen Duren is I don't think that the number I'm comfortable with is the number that he would take. So,
and Jaden Ivey is almost more complicated because like you said, I think he was on the cusp of like something really, really special. Also though, and look, like, here's the thing about the Ivy. I think sometimes you will hear people say they got so much better once Ivy left the lineup, right?
Yep.
Their 4 games right before Ivy left the lineup, they had beaten the Suns, they had beaten the Lakers, they had beaten the Kings all on the road. And that was a Kings team that I believe had both Duren and Sabonis. I feel like I watched that game, if I remember correctly. Sabonis did not play in that game.
I say,
but
because
Duren played, and
Fox had the foul, right? I think for the 4-point play.
Yes. And then they played in Denver and lost by 10-12. And then, by the way, they beat Orlando the next night as well. So they had won 5 or 4 out of 5 in those previous games, beating a really good, a solid Orlando team, let's say. That was an injured Orlando team still, but like a decent team. They had beaten Phoenix on the road. They had beaten the Lakers on the road, and they had beaten Sacramento on the road. I think that the run was starting with Ivy before he got hurt.
Ausar also wasn't in the rotation to start the season. And this was still a team that was coming off 14 wins, new GM, new coach, new veterans, a rookie that played every single game except for one and was playing this team was always going to take time to gel. So I will comfortably not agree with that narrative that this team was just better with Jaden Ivey. Or excuse me, without Jaden Ivey. I don't believe that to be true. Again, I always respect people's opinions, but I think that's an easy narrative to push because they win on something. It was going to take time to gel anyway. And again, we can't talk about Ausar Thompson in a certain light and then dismiss the fact that he wasn't a part of most of those games that Jaden Ivey did play in. And that's another thing is I talk about being a little bit nervous about this team running it back with all the same players and just it makes me a little bit nervous, but people bring up that starting lineup right there, Sam. That squad barely played together. That 5 of Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Ausar Thompson, Tobias Harris, Jalen Duren barely played together last season.
Yeah, and look, like that might not even be the starting 5 at the end of the day.
It may not.
It might be because it could be, but in those 5 games, by the way, that I referenced, Jaden Ivey had 19 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, shooting 60, 61, 75. Small samples, obviously, but like Ivy was on a heater before he got hurt is the thing too.
Yeah, he was on a heater on that stretch for sure.
So if I'm him, I look at what Jalen, again, like the Suggs deal is the one we referenced with the Christian Brown deal. That's probably the one I'm referencing here with Jaden Ivey. Like, I think that I was really good last year. I know I only played 30 games. That's probably the number I want. It's probably right around 30. Maybe he would take less coming off the injury just to like lock in the money, right? Like if someone offers you $100 million for 4 years coming off of an injury, maybe he would do that, but I don't know, man. Like that could look. I don't know if you care how it looks though. If you're getting the money, so he's a hard one to me to try and come up with a number for.
Yeah, so real quick, that 5-man lineup, whether we call it the starting lineup, whatever, of K, J.I., Ausar, Harris, JD, 2 minutes. They played I honestly would have guessed that they hadn't played together last year. So yeah. So my thing with J.I., so with JD, the conversation for me is, do you think him and Ausar can play together? If you don't, you prioritize Ausar, or like you said, or do you consider trading Ausar? Like, do you hold JD in high enough regard and move Ausar for a bigger move? My thing with J.I. is here's where I have a little bit of nerves with his contract. I think the outcomes of where J.I. ends up in this rotation and in the pecking order has more variance. Like, I know what I think Jalen Duren is. For J.I., if you told me he ends up being the number 2, like he is truly the Robin to Cade's Batman, I would believe you. I think that is an outcome. If you told me J.I. ends up being a really, really good 6th man, I would believe you. So the thing is, what is the range of the contracts you actually want to pay your Robin compared to your 6th man? And that's where, like, how do you thread that needle, Sam? Because I've thrown out the idea of a descending contract, but then people push back. If you give him a descending contract and he's Robin, how do you extend off that contract? And
I actually don't like that for him.
So I liked it initially. One of our listeners over on the Pistons Pulse brought up a great point.
I like that for Duren. I don't love that for him.
So there you go. Like, that's what, to your point, that's why J.I. is so much more complicated, because I think the variance of what his role on this team could be is much greater than what Jalen Duren's is. And, you know, like if you sign him up for 30 a year, how does that look? If it's like, man, you're actually our 6th man. Maybe it's not crazy detrimental. I don't know, but that's why I struggle at times with his number.
So Trey Murphy signed a deal that was like 27, 28 a year, right? And he was coming off of 15 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, shooting 44, 38, 81, right? You know, but only played 57 games that year, right? Maybe that's the ballpark to me, because I would say Trey was like slightly more accomplished at that point than what Jaden Ivey is. I would say Jalen Suggs certainly was more accomplished because he'd made an all defense team, was a huge part of that team, taking a big leap the previous year. I'm like trying to find the number that I would be comfortable with. And it is hard. Like Jalen Johnson was just way more productive on some level, right? And he signed his, I think his is 5/150 as well. I mean, we're assuming Giddey's probably going to get somewhere between like 25 to 30. And he's just like way more productive at the end of the day, like across the box score. I'd rather pay Ivy than Giddey, but like, that's just me personally. Moses Moody got like 15 a year. I would say Ivy is more accomplished than him. I would say he's more accomplished than Corey Kispert. It's a hard number. Like it's a weird middle ground kind of to try and figure out. Is it more like 20 or is it more like 27, 28? I don't see a world where Ivy takes 20. I think that the number probably settles in somewhere around 27, 28 if there's a deal to be agreed to.
So I typed in 30 million in 26-27 for Ivy and 25 in 26-27 for Duren into my cap sheet. And that still has him 21 million under the cap, 66 under the first apron. But Tobias Harris is an unrestricted free agent, and that's no other free agents from like this season on what kind of deals they may hand out. So I don't know how that sounds to you, but to me, that makes me feel a little bit better about maybe giving them those numbers, because what I'm seeing there is like the flexibility is not as like, it's still going to be there for them. They're not like all of a sudden pushing themselves into, oh my gosh, we got to start worrying about the first apron if we give them those type of deals. I think that's on the high end. 30 million is probably around the high end of what I'd want to give JI AAV. And I think 25 is the number for JD. If I can get them in below that, I'm signing them up. If they want more, and especially significantly more, then I probably do let this thing play out to restricted free agency.
I think I agree with you. I will also just say I would not blame the Pistons if they just played this entire process out.
Sure.
Because they just want more answers on these guys. Because look, Jalen Duren, we're working off of, basically a 30 game, like positive defensive sample. And Jaden Ivey just didn't play during their best run. And while I agree with the fact that I think that he was on a heater and it looked like they were going to turn it regardless, I might just want more information on how it looks at the end of the day.
Sam, they've had one. I talked about data collection all year, right? It was 1 year of competent basketball. It was we've seen Asar Thompson for a little more than half a season with no off season because of his blood clots. That's all we've got, because his rookie year was an effing disaster. I say this about Jalen Duren all the time. If I'm Jalen Duren and I watch Jaden Ivey get benched for Killian Hayes because he's not doing what he's supposed to, and I still get to start every game, I assume I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing because the head coach continued to start me. So why would I change anything? J.I. got benched. He was the one not doing anything. The coach would bench me if I wasn't doing what I was supposed to. I must be doing it right. So we got 1 year of data. That's not enough data collection. I shouldn't say it's not. That's why there could still be reason for wanting more data collection. And J.I. only got 30 games of that. These guys have played for 3 different coaches, Sam. J.I. and J.D. They played for Casey, then they played for Monty, then they got JB this year. 3 coaches in 3 years for those 2 guys. So I wouldn't blame Trajan for wanting to know more.
The other big benefit here, though, if they do agree to a deal, is that the cap continues to rise, and it's just going to be really hard to sign bad extensions, I think. Unless guys like just can't play and they aren't rotation players, like it's hard to sign bad extensions below $30 million right now. If you think a player is going to turn into like a good, solid rotation player, or like a starting caliber player, as long as they're a starting caliber player, maybe is the way to put it, at 25 million and less, 30 million and less. As long as they're starters, like it's a good number with the way that the salary cap is going to rise over the course of the next few years. Like you look at, where that number is going to be in terms of like the multi-year tracker. I mean, that number is going to be up at like, what is it? It's going to be 205 in 2028, 29. It's going to be 226, the salary cap, like 226 in 2029, 30.
Yeah. Yep.
And, 2029, 30 would be, if I remember correctly, the last year of those extensions, if they're 4-year extensions. So
correct. Yep.
The way that the cap is rising, it's going to be hard to sign these guys to bad extensions. The key is, though, that making sure that you're still solid on these guys fitting all together, in my opinion.
And I think what makes me a little nervous, it's not nervous, it's just like cognizant, is Cade's numbers are big. And especially at time of recording, we haven't seen All NBA, but we saw the MVP voting. Cade's going to make All NBA. Like he's not going to end up 7th or whatever he ended up in MVP voting, or 8th or whatever, and not at least be on 3rd team All NBA. It looks like he's tracking to be 2nd team All NBA, which means his number is going to kick in. And, so like his number that year you're talking about is $68 million. And so those numbers make me nervous initially. Like, okay, they can't put themselves in cap hell by making bad decisions. But to your point, stuff under 30 with where the salary cap is going is probably going to be fine. And so I should probably be a little more okay with a 4-year, $100 million Duren deal, even if I would rather it be 4 for 88 or something, and a 4 for 120 JI deal, even if I would rather it be 4 for 110 or something like that.
By the way, we haven't even gotten to the meat of like the craziness that can be their off season, right? So they have the ability to either be an over the cap team or an under the cap team, depending on the way that they decide to do this.
Frustrating. I don't like covering a team that's in this situation.
So the way that this works is, I can kind of go into detail.
Yep.
If they get rid of all of their cap holds and decide that they want to remove like Malik Beasley, Dennis Schroeder, Tim Hardaway Jr., move on from all of these guys, they can have right around $25 million in cap space. If they want to just move forward with that. If they do that, they would also have the room exception, which would give them $8.8 million. And they would have potentially the biannual exception to play with if they want to as well. So like you can sign a player for $25 million. You can sign a player for $8.8 million. And then you can sign a player for $5 million is kind of the idea there. Or they can continue to operate over the cap, utilizing the cap holds of Malik Beasley, Dennis Schroeder, and particularly Tim Hardaway. They can use the full mid-level at 14.1 and the biannual if they want it, 5.1. And they can retain Schroeder Probably not Hardaway Jr. Maybe they do retain Tim. Is like a lower number, but you'd use his cap hold to stay over the cap throughout the offseason if you wanted to go this way. And then Beasley is really the key one.
Yep.
Because my guess is that to retain Beasley, I don't think it'll be a full mid-level, but I think it'll probably be part of a full mid-level if you wanted to do that. So like, if you didn't want to retain Schroeder and you didn't want to retain Hardaway, you could have the 25 million and you would need to hope that Beasley accepts a number at 8.8 or less.
Yeah.
But if you want to retain Beasley, which I think that they do, like that's my read, is that like Beasley's probably the one of these guys they want to retain. Would you agree with that?
And they should. Correct. Yes.
Yeah. It almost works better for them to operate, I would say, over the cap.
Yeah.
Utilize part of their mid-level for Beasley, who has non-bird rights because he signed a 1-year deal last summer, which means they can't give him more than, do you have the max number on his non-bird rights? It's less than what he'll take, basically. Yeah. I think they're better off probably operating over the cap.
Yeah, and I will say that number, we ran into this with Mobley and the Cavs number as well. I think the number ends up closer to 20 million because of the Cade all NBA stuff. If in terms of the cap space, I think it's closer to 20 million in cap space if they decided to operate under the cap. I assume they're going to operate over. And, the interesting one is like, when you saw this rotation last year, that again, like we highlight, that was without Jaden Ivey. So where do his 30 minutes a game come in terms of Tim Hardaway Jr., Beasley? They traded for Schroeder. Like all of those were good moves. They paid off, like all of that. But there's not enough rotational minutes for all of those guys in the backcourt. So I think one guy is going to be odd man out and probably isn't on this team next year. But as you said, you kind of want to use the Tim Hardaway Jr. cap hold to operate over because that's probably your best way of keeping the guys you want. Unless you're like, you know what? we're not going to keep Schroeder either. We can go cap space and we can sign Beasley for 10, 11, 12, whatever. Have another 8 to 10 available, have the room at $8 million and play in the free agency market that way. I mean, I think there are some avenues here, and it's not just like a big $20 million free agent signing either. I just don't know what they're going to value in terms of Schroeder, Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr. And like, I would love to get Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Like that's the name I love for this team. But with that said, it's like, okay, you got to find the minutes for him. And then where does that money come from in terms of like, can you go to cap space and get Beasley and Nah? I think you're really really close. Unless the other option here, Sam, is if they dumped Fontecchio. Fontecchio gets you up closer to like 27 to 30 million. He didn't have a great season shooting the ball. That could be a path as well. If they did want to go the under the cap route and really kind of be real players and get over 25.
So the thing here is trying to figure out names that work for them. Right. And to be honest with you, this offseason, like, I don't know that there are a ton of names that are better than them just playing over the cap and retaining Beasley and Schroeder, right? That's kind of my main issue here. So you and I have talked a bit about Brook Lopez. Like, I think Brook Lopez makes sense for this team. I would love to see, a spacer with Cade. Like, I think that'd be really interesting. Just get a test run of it. But if I'm Brook Lopez, like, you're muted. I don't know if I would like
proof of concept. Yes.
Yeah, I would want the proof of concept. But if I'm Brook Lopez, like, I probably need real money to go to Detroit.
Yeah.
Instead of like, he's from LA. Like, I think that both the Lakers and Clippers could realistically use him. Right. Yep. You kind of look through, I mean, it's hard to find the guy that like truly works here, in my opinion. Like the position that I would love them to get like one more bigger, forward type body. Right.
Sure. Yep.
I don't know how to find that is my issue though.
Okay. So
like, is there a world, again, like we keep talking about PJ Washington, right? With all these teams, because PJ, it seems like, is odd man outie in Dallas, with them likely selecting Cooper Flagg in the draft. Like, is there a Fontecchio plus stuff for PJ Washington deal?
Sure. I think that would be interesting. I do think, yeah, that is interesting. Maybe he's the 4-man of the future after Tobias starts to phase out at his age. I'm not giving up a first round pick, and I don't know if Fontecchio plus seconds. And, here's the thing. Would Dallas be interested in Fontecchio and Sasser? Like Fontecchio, Sasser, and you throw in some seconds. I don't know if that's great.
I mean, here's an interesting one. Are they interested in a sign and trade for Dennis Schroeder?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense for them with the way that, Kyrie's likely out for a substantial portion of next season? That's a guard that could really work for them.
Yep. Schroeder would be awesome. I can't
remember how close they are to the tax off the top of my head to be able to figure out, can they just sign him to their non-taxpayer mid-level? They do have some second apron space, but they are 4 over the tax already, it looks like, for next season. And that's without the Kyrie deal that is forthcoming. Or no, that's including his 43. So I think they probably would need to sign and trade. And I don't think they're going to be a second apron team. So I think that they probably can actually do something like this. Yeah. They could probably pull off a sign and trade. I think Dallas.
No, that one's really interesting. I will tell you the big that I've kind of warmed up to since the thing in Boston happened is Al Horford. I think Al Horford would be awesome for this team, for the proof of concept that we were talking about earlier. And I think you could even do because Horford, you could probably do some him and Isaiah Stewart together in the second unit, even because Horford can space the floor and some different rotations like that. So he's the one. Again, I just don't know what those guys are kind of signing up for or looking to. The wing that I love is Sam Merrill. I just want
it'd be amazing.
You continue to get floor spacing and shooting. And that's what I brought up the other day on the Pistons Pulse was everybody wants to just kick Tim Hardaway Jr. out of the lineup. Fine. But I think he made the second most threes on the team. He's a volume. You have to replace. You can't just you have to have floor spacing. This was a team that it finally got a little bit and they flourished overall. But they were still 17th in 3-point percentage this last season. And their defense is really actually what kind of catapulted this whole thing. You can't regress in terms of floor spacing and shooting, especially if you want to continue to figure out what is JI, what is Asar, what is Ron Holland.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I was kind of playing with the potential sign and trade, PJ Washington, Dennis Schroeder. I think they'd probably have to give up a little bit more than Schroeder, but not much more, honestly. So that's an interesting one to me that works. Okay. I agree with you on Merrill. I think that's a really good idea. I think that'd be a perfect replacement for Tim Hardaway Jr. They have the number 37 overall pick to be able to kind of even out some potential moves here and there.
Yep.
I think that this team should essentially be looking to run it back with some minor tweaks is where I'm at.
That's where I've landed as well in terms of, I don't mind depending on what they feel like the market is and, this Schroeder for PJ type of idea, realm, whatever stuff like that is all I'm expecting. I am not looking for them to be big. They just got back. Well, they don't even yet. They're just about to get back full control of their draft capital after this draft that finally conveys. I don't anticipate Trajan just going to move it all right away again in a big move. Figure out what you have, let that stuff settle a little bit. If Cade is all NBA again, and you really get a couple data points on a couple of these other guys, and you feel like you're ready to make a move and the East is wide open, do it at the deadline. Make your move at the deadline. But for me, that's the earliest I would want to make that type of move.
But again, though, if you do it at the deadline, you have less flexibility if you extend Ivy and Duren. is the fun thing. That's what makes this offseason so complicated. I feel like for them is they have so many different options on the table and they really have to make difficult decisions now financially on young guys that they maybe don't have enough data points on to be able to make those choices.
Way better than making decisions after a 14-win season though, Sam.
That is true. I think if I was recommending, I would probably try to look at like moving Schroeder for PJ, operating over the cap, because that like allows you to stay over the cap as you continue to do that. Try to retain Beasley using their mid-level, and then, probably looking at Hardaway and maybe retaining Tim Hardaway that way at like a cheaper dollar figure.
Yep.
I feel like that's an interesting summer for them. And then they figure out the extension stuff. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on for you.
Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky. I got the Substack, which if you're watching this particular offseason breakdown, the one of the 30 that this really makes sense, Motor City Hoops Substack, all Pistons content over there. The Pistons Pulse, again, the one time it really hits home if you're watching this, me and Omari Sankofa II. Otherwise, right here, Game Theory Podcast with the Sam Vecenie.
I think nobody will be surprised to know that the Pistons offseason preview is the longest one that we have recorded to this point.
Yep.
Look, I told you this was going to be a complicated one. Just they have so many different options. You were like, no, this is easy. This is where we're at. The Pistons, this is fine. Okay. Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. Go hit the subscribe button over on YouTube. It really helps support the show. Go hit the subscribe button on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your listening platforms. Hit the like button. Hit the 5 stars, the thumbs up, whatever you can. We'll be back tomorrow probably with more off-season preview content. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.